How's everybody doing today? What we're going to look at today is called lookup formulas. And if you remember last time, we looked at if statements. If statements are nice because you can have two different values in the same formula. In this particular one, if you remember, we had an if statement to calculate rate. Rate was based on their level. Level 1 people made $10 an hour. Level 2 people made $12 an hour. So if I go up here and I put in a formula for rate, I've got equal sign if C3 equals 2. So I'm saying if their level equals 2, comma, they're going to make $12. Remember, we've got a condition, a value to use if that condition is true, and an alternate value to use if that condition is false. So if C3 equals 2, they're going to get $12 an hour. If this is false, they get 10. So it works out nice. If I can go over here and change the level to 1, it changes it to 10. If I change the level to 2, it changes it to 12. I can copy this formula down. It works for all the employees. So it's a real nice system to use. Problem with if statements is if you have over two different conditions, they get a little messy. For example, if I had level 3 and level 4 and level 5, it's difficult to make an if statement to work with those. You can do what's called a nested if statement, and your book does talk about that, but they're pretty difficult to use and they're pretty messy. So I've got an alternative which is called lookup formulas, which works really good. You go over here and click on my lookup tab, and we're going to see a slightly different scenario. Here we've got levels, but it's more than 2 levels. We go all the way up to 5 levels, and each level makes a different hourly rate. And what I want to do is I want to put in a formula that calculates the rate based on the level, and I want to be able to copy it down, and I want it to work for everybody just like the if statements did. So what I'm going to use is called a lookup formula. Lookup formula has 2 major parts to it. First off is you have to create a lookup table. Now, the lookup table almost always consists of just numbers, and the numbers always start from lowest to highest. Now, this one's a pretty simple one. All I have to do is pull out what level they are and what rate they make, and I'll have my lookup table. So if I say, okay, I've got levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I've got rates 10, 12, 15, 20, and 24, pretty much good to go. Now, it's a good idea to name the table. You don't have to, but it helps when you do the formula. It makes things just a tiny bit easier. What I'm going to name this one is just rate. So I'm going to highlight it, and I'm just going to call it rate. And I hit enter. So this table now is called rate. What I'm going to do next is my lookup formula. My lookup formula is going to require 3 pieces of information. It needs a lookup value, which is, for me, going to be my level. It's saying, well, how do I determine rate? What do I have to look at? I have to look at the level. The next piece of information it needs is, where's my table located? And since I named my table, I can just refer to it as rate. And the last piece of information it needs is, which column do I want to use? I've got 2 columns in my table. Do I want to use column 1 or do I want to use column 2 for the answer? Since my answer that I want returned is in column 2, I'm just going to put a 2 there. So this is how the formula goes. Equal sign VLOOKUP. It's a VLOOKUP because it's vertical. The table was vertical. I could have done it horizontal, but I like using vertical tables. So it's equal sign VLOOKUP. Now it needs a lookup value, which we said was going to be C3. It needs to know where my table is. I called my table rate, so I'm just going to type rate, and it needs the column that I want to use, which is column 2. Put that all in there. I close my parenthesis. Notice it does have to be separated with commas, so I've got C3, comma rate, comma 2. I hit enter, and it gives me a rate, and I'm thinking, okay, is that right? Level 1 makes 10. Usually before I copy the formula down, I'll test it. I'll say, okay, does it work for 2? It worked for 2. I got 12. Does it work for 3? I got 15. Does it work for 4? I got 20. Does it work for 5? I got 24. So it does seem to be working. So I say, okay, I can copy this down, and I'm good to go. Worked for everybody. I can verify that everybody's rate is correct. So it's a nice way, it's a nice alternative to a nested if statement, which is pretty messy and difficult to use. The other thing you might run into with lookup tables is a situation where it's not quite as clean cut. Here it was easy because we have 1, 10, 2, 12. Sometimes you have to deal with ranges. And when you have to deal with ranges, you always have to start with the lowest possible number, and you always have to look for where the change occurs. So here it says less than 5 years, no bonus. We're going to try to do a lookup table that figures out the person's bonus based on the number of years they've been with the company. So it says less than 5 years, no bonus. So if I start with the lowest number, the lowest possible number is 0 years. If I worked at the company for, say, a month, I'd still be at 0 years. Where the first change occurs is at 5 years. Where the next change occurs is at 10 years, right? 10 to 19 years, they get 150 bonus. And where the last change occurs is at 20 years. So I was able to look at this information and pull out just the important pieces. Start at the very lowest and then look for where the change occurs. I have to say now, what bonus do they get? Well, if they work there 0 years, they get a 0 bonus. If they work there 5 years to 9 years, they get a $100 bonus. And it goes up to 150, and lastly it goes up to 200. The way the lookup table works is when it's given a lookup value, it always settles on the row that's less than or equal to the lookup value. So let's say I said in this case it's 6 years. So it'll go and look for the instance of 6. It doesn't find it, so it settles on the row that's less than or equal to it. Settles on the row that's 5, they get a $100 bonus. So that works. Here the 15 year, it settles on the row that's less than or equal to 15, so it'll settle on this row, 10, and I'll give them the $150 bonus, which is correct. This is the way it's supposed to work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to name this table. I'm going to name this one years. And now I'm going to go build my formula. And remember, this is also a vertical lookup. So I'm going to say $VLOOKUP. Put in my parenthesis. Needs a lookup value, so my lookup value in this case is years, so that's going to be E3. I need my table is called years. And the last thing it needs is which column. I actually want to return the bonus, so it's going to be column 2. I close my parenthesis, I hit enter, and for some reason it didn't like years. Let me see what I did here. I didn't name this. Let me go ahead and name it again. Years, hit enter. Oh, okay, so now it understands. But I guess I never hit enter when I named my years table. Just to recap, I've got $VLOOKUP. E3 was my lookup value, what I had to look for. I had to look for years. My table name, I called it years. And the column I want to use is 2. So again, I usually, before I copy these, I do like to test them. Let's say if I worked 11 years at this company, I'm supposed to be getting a $150 bonus. If I worked for, say, 23 years, I'm supposed to get a $200 bonus. If I worked for 3 years, a $0 bonus. So it does seem to be working okay for me. So I'm going to copy it down and check my results. And that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right. Okay, looks like it worked for everybody. Now, one last note for homework. One of the things you guys are going to have for homework is you're going to have to create a lookup table that calculates letter grade. Now, it's going to be a slightly different worksheet than this, but I just want to try to give you some ideas to start with. Here's some information for this grading policy, and it's pretty straightforward. If below 60, you're going to get an F. 60 to 69.9, you get a D. So if you were to start this lookup table, remember it's always you start at the lowest possible value. The lowest possible value you could get on a test, I guess, is 0. And if you got a 0 on a test, you would get an F. The next value where a change occurs is 60, and if you got a 60 on a test, you would get a D. And so on. Where would the next change occur? Well, the next change occur would be at a 70, and then you would get a C, and so on. So you're going to have to build a lookup table, create a formula, and when you copy that formula down, it should calculate the letter grade for each numeric grade. So hopefully that'll work out for you. Anyhow, a little bit on lookup tables. I do like lookup tables a lot. They come in handy for a lot of situations and much easier than trying to deal with a nested if statement. You could do all these with a nested if statement, but they get very tricky and very hard to troubleshoot. Whereas a lookup table, pretty straightforward stuff. Hopefully that worked out for you. We'll see you next time.